This is Southern and Jewish, a video podcast from the Institute of Southern Jewish Life. I'm Nora Katz. Part of what makes this show so special is the opportunity we have to dive deep into meaningful conversations with people who shape and are shaped by the Jewish South. Lowen, a Nashville-based producer, songwriter, and artist, is definitely one of those people. Growing up in South Florida as a Jewish daughter of a Colombian immigrant, Emily Kopp, who performs under the name Lowen, was surrounded by music. The Beatles from her dad, organic rhythms, flavor, and dance from her mom, and Hebrew and Israeli songs in school. In college, she opened for artists like Brandi Carlile, Mark Cohn, and Matchbox 20, while also touring regionally and releasing music independently. In 2016, Lowen sold the tour van, saved up money, and took a sabbatical to go backpacking around the world with her now wife. From working on an avocado farm in New Zealand, to living in a brewery in Argentina, to jamming with musicians in the clubs of Hanoi, Vietnam, the experience brought a profound shift in perspective. Emily made her debut as Lowen with her 2019 EP, Only in My Dreams, and the hit single, Just Let Me Love You. Her songs are raw and honest, fluid and creative, and absolutely demand that you sing along. As a songwriter and producer, Lowen has also grown her catalog through major and micro sync placements, putting out music under a number of pseudonyms that has been played all over the world. You could have heard her voice on the Cartoon Network, NBC, Hulu, and Disney+, or in commercials for brands like Android, Google, Volkswagen, Samsung, LG, and Fitbit. When Lowen isn't writing and producing for commercial projects or for other artists, you can find her on tour or home in Nashville working on her own music in the studio she's dubbed the Zula, a place she deliberately set up to remind her of when she first started tinkering, jamming with others, and creating from fluidity and fun. We talked about all of this and more. Plus, Lowen played a few of her songs for us. I hope you enjoy our conversation. I'm hoping to start that you can kind of introduce folks to who you are and to your music, and sort of how would you characterize your music and sort of the work that you do?
My name that I was born with, that my friends call me and everybody knows me as, in my personal life, is Emily Kopp, and I perform and produce and write under Lowen, which is my family's last name, my grandmother's last name. My mom, on my whole mom's side of the family, is Lowenthal, which is my German Jewish side of the family. And so I'd been touring as a singer-songwriter in college and a little bit afterwards for a while under my own name. And so when it came time to sort of re-begin, I decided I wanted to release music under a different name and sort of give myself it gives me a little bit of mental freedom too. So yeah, that's what I do. I'm a touring artist, and I put out my own music. I write with other artists. I produce music as well. A lot of my music that I've been a part of, a lot of my sort of commercial success has come from music that's been in TV campaigns, commercial campaigns, film shows, things like that. And yeah, and I'm a music producer as well. So and I play all the instruments. I'm a music man. I'm a music girl.
I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the genesis of your musical life.
It wasn't a conscious decision. I was just always feeling really musical. I just remember being musical. Growing up, my dad plays guitar. He's a really beautiful singer as well. And so we would always play and jam together. And it was kind of a natural part of life where some people maybe did other things that felt natural. That just kind of felt I thought everybody else did that. I thought everybody else improvised, on the glove compartment and playing beats. And by like elementary school, I would bring in like pots and pans into my bedroom and start like playing drums, uh and I had like a janky recorder set up. And so I was always trying to like create things and then try to like capture them. And then in 4th grade, I went to a Jewish private school I started in 1st grade in South Florida. And it might have been 3rd grade or 4th grade is when they started to let kids be a part of the choir. So I joined the choir. And that was, I would say, like the real genesis of being a part of something musical with other people. And I was also a part of the like exclusive private choir that our choir teacher selected a few people, high schoolers and middle schoolers and elementary schoolers, that would come together. It was 10 of us maybe, and do other outside of school gigs. So we would go to like Jewish retirement homes. We were called Holly's Follies, and we would sing Hebrew songs for them, and yeah, like traditional Israeli like pop songs and very like traditional Jewish songs. And then at school functions, like the regular choir, we would, for Yom HaAtzmaut and for I grew up with a lot of Israelis, so um like Israel life was a big part of it too. It was very Jewish, and like it wasn't a very religious school, but we did have religious studies, but it wasn't strictly like American Jews. It was global. I mean, my family's from Colombia. We're Colombian Jews. There were a ton of South American Jews that I went to school with, and a lot of Israeli Jews. So every holiday we performed. And then I also had a band at that time that we would rehearse in my house. After my bat mitzvah, I bought myself a drum set. And then, so I was singing, I was playing drums, and then in middle school, we were allowed to move to. We got a music teacher, an Israeli guy who was my first like mentor, my first like real musical, who like showed me a way. Um, and so I joined the band, which was like a top 40 kind of band. And we played like I Will Survive and like classic cover band songs, and also like classic like Sarit Hadad songs and a lot of like Israeli songs as well, and play during every school function. And then we would rehearse every day. And so that's when I got more into like the band life of it and playing guitar with other people, playing bass with other people, improvising, learning how to improvise, learning how to communicate with other musicians. I would sing for certain songs, and then I would hop around the drums and play drums for certain songs. So my school gave me an opportunity. It was a really, really small school to like really just sink my teeth into the things that I loved, like sports being one of them too. And then like music was the other thing. So that was like the genesis for me of that was like the breeding ground was I think for a lot of my friends here, it was like church, like being in the church band. And for me, it was being a part of my school Jewish, and we would sing in Hebrew choir and also band.
Can you talk a little bit more about growing up in such a Jewish environment in South Florida and kind of like how you feel like that has impacted you into the present?
I haven't really appreciated it or recognized that it had an impact until recently, until now, because I think, like a lot of things, I don't know if you go to therapy, but like if for people who are in therapy, sometimes I'll say something to my therapist and you'll think something is a norm until they're like, "Oh, that was not cool of that person to da." And so until someone else tells you, until you have some sort of other context that that is not a typical experience, you don't really know. Like a fish in water doesn't really know it's in water. And I think that's what was growing up because I was just in this cocoon. We had all the holidays off. Um, so there was no questions of like, why are you off of school today? It was like all of my friends were off. Like we would do Sukkot, we would do um literally like there's so many holidays. There are so many Jewish holidays. So school for me was very much like growing up was I loved my environment. I had my best friends that I made and like 3rd grade. We had probably met in 1st grade, became best friends in 3rd grade, and we graduated together in 12th grade. Like, I grew up knowing the same people, which is also feels very intrinsic to being a Jew, where it's like these deep roots, even within my family who grew up, my mom and her sisters who grew up in Cali, Colombia, in a very, very, very small Jewish community, they still keep in touch with their friends from their school there and from, here we have the JCC, there they have the Club Shalom, and that's where they would go every weekend, and it is generational, and we keep in touch. Like, I have family friends from previous generations, and the kids are friends with us, and they live all over the world, and it's this comfort and this idea of togetherness, and it is kind of tribal in that sense. Like, my 8th grade field trip was to Israel, and you go through elementary school preparing and, like, knowing that that's what you get to do in 8th grade for 2.5 weeks, and your friendships are super close. Um, I was encouraged really, really young to question things, to think freely, to discuss, which is an inherently very Jewish thing. And that was a fundamental part of my education. Freedom to explore. Like, there would be different we prayed every morning. But there was like a reform class you could go to if you just wanted to talk, and like, hey, it would just be like kids hanging out, like playing. And then there would be an actual prayer group, like a more conservative, where you would just go through the morning service. And then there was for the Orthodox kids, because I did go to school with kids who kept kosher at home. And I just was raised with a wide variety within the Jewish spectrum. And I was as someone who's super into thinking deeply about things and questioning why things are the way they are, and I think I was just born with that ism, and it was, like, watered with, um, my Jewish education, which went hand in hand, and I really didn't realize how, abnormal that experience was, because I remember going to college the first time I ate in the cafeteria with everybody. They called it the marketplace, and seeing kids, like, I always saw it on television, like, very American, like, people eating their dinner, like, steak or whatever with, like, a glass of milk. Like, to me, that is, like, the quintessential American dinner or something, and it's, like, so goy, and it's, like, so not a Jewish thing, and seeing stuff like that in college and being like, "Oh my gosh," like, it's like the Gentile way of life was so, it's very American. Like, I don't feel very American. I feel very, Colombian, very, like, Latin, and just, like, very Jewish culturally and in the way that I live life, and we have people over every Friday for Shabbat. I went to my grandma's every Friday for Shabbat. It just was how it was. We didn't go to synagogue or anything like that, but there were just family being tight and certain ways of moving through the world, um, that are just inherently because of how I was raised, and only now am I recognizing that, which I love. I'm feeling really grateful for a lot of it.
I'm curious about how, like, what kind of role you feel like that played in your development as a musician, and like currently, like, how do you feel like Jewishness is a part of your art?
Well, it's so interesting because I started solely producing my last 4 songs I put out. I had produced it during quarantine, and I did it pretty, by myself, and I had someone else mix it. But when I listen to, like, the layers of things that I put into my tracks and my songs, a lot of them, in hindsight, when I'm listening back, I love to stack lots and lots of lush vocals and create parts. Sometimes I'll I'll choose my voice over an instrument a lot of the time with certain ideas. because it's the instrument I'm most fluid in. And a lot of my parts come off as very prayer-like when I listen back to them. If you just isolate the parts, and I'm not religious, like, I don't I don't go to synagogue, and I'm more of, like, a spiritual I'm not atheist, but we get into that. But, like, there's melodically, there are a lot of like, I have a part in my song Boundaries in the outro. I just was improvising, and it's like, "Ay, ay, 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 da, 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 da," and there's just a lot of these sort of, like, visceral, expressive things, and it makes me think that a lot of the music I still listen to a lot of Hebrew music, and a lot of, like, these songs and the prayers that I grew up singing have sort of, like I mean, everything, even, like, the Backstreet Boys albums I listened to growing up, the Eminem record, like, everything seeps its way in. Sheryl Crow, John Mayer, like, they all seep their way in, and the Jewish stuff seeps its way in, and melodically, a lot of these, like, lush vocals I'm recognizing are very, like, meditative prayer-like. And I've also experimented with, like I started doing a song in Hebrew, and for some reason, I had this self-conscious thing of, especially in college, of, like, not wanting to really, like, talk about it too because it was like, you don't want, like, non-Jews to think you're, like, weirdly religious because you're not. I'm not, but when you don't know anything about Judaism, anything can seem like you're a religious weirdo. And so or that's a story I created in my head. I went on a trip to New York and I landed for a show, uh, many months ago, and we landed back in Florida, I think. No, it was when we landed in New York, and this Jewish guy with his family, I could tell because he was like a Lubavitch, like he was religious, and it was Sukkot. So I said, "Chag Sameach," and he stopped me and he was like, "Medaberet Ivrit," and we started speaking Hebrew together. And he handed me like the lulav and the etrog, and he was like, "Do you have 5 seconds to do this?" And I was like, I'm literally have to go get my bags. I don't have time. We're like speaking in Hebrew. And he goes, "Come on, it's like it's the holiday. You have to. It's like a mitzvah. It's good. Like just five minutes and we'll do the prayers and whatever." And in the middle of the airport in New York, like he handed it to me and we did the whole thing and he like led me through the prayers. It was like a 2-minute thing. And I felt so amazing and like semi-emotional after it because I'm not we I didn't I wasn't of a family who like did that stuff at home. A lot of the kids I went to school with were, but now being in a life where I'm a small fish in this like big pond of people who like don't really know about our culture, it was like really beautiful. Like, it was really beautiful for him to know that I know what that is and me to know that he knows that I know. Um, I don't know how we got here, but that's yeah, yeah.
I think that's amazing. I'm wondering, because you talked about the song Boundaries, if you want to play it.
This is a song called Boundaries. I have a cold, so or allergies. Either way, I usually sound better. I feel myself reverting back to 13. All eyes on me, the black sheep weirdo, dressed up at a family thing. Now I'm older, second guessing why I give a damn what they think. Take a breath and let the mantra sing. The things that make me me don't need no fixing. I'm speaking up, I'm growing. The truth has been hushed and bottled up. I exploded and I'm sorry if it didn't come out too nice. I've been working hard on my boundaries. I know it's not an excuse for my attitude running wild. Cut to the root and heal wounds of my inner child. Sorry if it didn't come out too nice. Been working hard on my boundaries. It's a good day. You came for a visit. I'm sitting in the garden with a critic. I'm holding my tongue, counting my breath to forgiveness. I'm doing my best to hear what you say. The place that you came is so sad in its ways. The things that make me don't need no fixing. I'm speaking up, I'm growing. The truth has been hushed and bottled up. I exploded. I'm sorry if it didn't come out too nice. I've been working hard on my boundaries. I know it's not an excuse for my attitude running wild. Cut to the root and heal wounds of my inner child. Sorry if it didn't come out too nice. Been working hard on my boundaries. Oh, oh my, I've grown up, I've tried, and I've loved. I'm me, and I grow. I'm good, and I know. I've been working on my. Sorry if it didn't come out too nice. Been working hard on my boundaries. Sorry if it didn't come out too nice. Sorry if it didn't come out too nice. I've been working hard on my boundaries. Sorry if it didn't come out too nice. Sit inside my garden, stay a while, let your troubles go. Sorry if it didn't come out too nice, my boundaries.
Can you talk a little bit about that song?
A lot of it is like rooted in my own insecurity and not taking agency and ownership over over myself and feeling insecure about maybe being other in a lot of situations with people that I love, especially as I grew up wearing a uniform and uh a being a part of, like a private school system. And like I remember getting my first tattoo was like a big deal, and like sort of breaking out of my own head of what I thought was okay, what was not. And that's not specifically what that song is about, but that is like adjacent to a lot of it. Like came with a lot of that. So yeah, that song is like a apology for um like I'm just learning how to say like no, that's not for me. I'm just learning. So if it comes out a little jank, I'm sorry truly, because I'm this is new a little bit for me.
I love that a lot. I'm wondering if you can talk about like your journey to Nashville and like how you've ended up where you are now.
Well, I'd been coming here. I went to the University of Central Florida in Orlando, and um, I had been coming here a little bit towards the end of college because I had heard that this was a hub for songwriters. Some people in the industry that I had connected with at that time suggested that I come here for visits, and they would help me, write with people and get it. like, have you ever co-written before, which is a big part of the culture here. A lot of people who get up every day and write with a different person every single day. It is the home of songwriting and just wanting to get better at songwriting. So I was, because I was kind of in a bubble by myself and writing by myself, and I was very green. I was playing live a lot, but the songwriting component of my artistry, I was a writer, but really was still like finding my voice as like a songwriter who's putting out my own music as an artist. Um, and so when I left Orlando, I left I left music for about a year. I left music as a hardcore career pursuit, which was I was very like goal oriented. Like the athlete in me was very much like I have to make this work. My friends are either in grad school, they're either starting law school, or they're getting their masters and and something else, or they're starting corporate America jobs and they have car leases. Like I remember that was being like a really big deal, or they're working for their family's business. There's a little bit of like nepo where I grew up. I wasn't from a wealthy family, so I grew up around a lot of wealthy kids. Um and refusing to I like refused to get a conventional job outside of college, and I jumped right into continuing music. So at that time that meant playing a lot of cover gigs, like 4 or 5 days a week for brunches or at wine bars or at regular bars and like, 9 to 1 or whatever it was. And then I would save my money and use it to like fund my weekend warrior touring. And so by the time I was out of college, under Emily Kopp, I had self-released a couple of things. And at that time, I'd be playing these cover songs, and then I got on 3 tour dates with Brandy Carlisle. And then I would come back to reality and play more cover gigs and then go back out and play a couple gigs with this other bit, like name whatever random, like some of it was like super random. And my boss at the time was also booking me and helping me in like a management capacity. And so he would just get me on these shows just to like get me exposure and get me and I'm so grateful for those years. And I grinded so hard and I was so unfulfilled and I was so tired and so poor and was going through a really, really horrendous a really painful breakup with my high school sweetheart at the time. And yeah, he and I split, and then my now wife and I were together as girlfriends, and I was like, I think I need to take a break from music and sort of like live life a little bit because I've been eager to like prove myself these last few years, and I'm a hamster on a wheel and I don't really know what my point is anymore, and I don't want to live in Orlando forever. So we went on a big backpacking trip. It was like a big thing. Like a big part of my story is kind of like where everything starts. And so we went on this year-long backpacking trip. We lived it on a, like avocado farm in the North Island of New Zealand. We lived in a camper van for a month in the South Island of New Zealand. We worked for my wife was a chef at the time, and we worked and volunteered at this really cool restaurant in Hanoi, Vietnam. And I taught English, and we just kind of like lived in Hanoi for a month. And then we backpacked through Thailand. We were in Bali. We lived in a brewery in Argentina in Buenos Aires. We worked and lived in random places just to like continue being able to travel. And I was writing a lot at that time, journaling a lot. And I didn't bring like a recording setup, but I was constantly like recording voice memos, and I was writing. And I would play gigs like if it would happen. So my rule was I'm not allowed to like book anything ahead of time, but if I get plugged into like a scene because we were in these places for such a chunk of time, then I would like pop in. So I was like playing gigs in Thailand, like, we would just, like, walk outside of our hostel and walk to local bars, and there are these amazing, like, jazz clubs in an area of Thailand called Pai, and I was just playing for fun, like, with other musicians, and I wasn't trying to get a write-up in Billboard and get on a tour, and I wasn't trying to do anything. I was just living life, and it was, like, life-changing experience, and after that was over, we came to Nashville, because oddly enough, during that time is when a lot of my songs started popping off I started getting a lot of sync licenses, and huge, huge brands were using my songs for, like, massive brand campaigns. So I remember being in our we were living in this tiny flat in Hanoi, at this bathroom I'm just thinking about, like, the places we were staying were just so crazy, and, getting, like, an email from, like, my one of the people I worked with at the time and being like, "You landed this da 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 Fitbit wants to use this song for this," and that was sort of so I started having some sort of, like, financial securities, not you're never secure as a musician, but finally, I was like, "Something's happening." And so when the year was up, we figured it would be a really good play. I had always wanted to make my way to Nashville, and that seemed like the next adventurous step for us. So we literally moved from Buenos Aires to Nashville. Like, got all of our stuff that was in a not a shipping container, in a storage unit, packed up a moving truck, and through mutual friends, found a room to rent online, and that's how we got our start living here in 2017.
I'm curious about how, like, what kind of impact you feel like Nashville has had on you as a musician. I know you talked about like collaboration and producing more, and like, yeah, what shape has that taken?
In so many ways, being in Nashville has made me at the beginning, it made me less confident, and in, so many other ways, it's made me more confident. So, as a songwriter, I came here and was like, "Wow, I have work to do." And then as a performer, I wasn't impressed. I wasn't impressed when I came here. As someone who had gotten their start playing live and touring, um, like, the live aspect of, like, the local scene here of, like, artists who are, like, trying to do it and who were doing it and playing shows and playing with band like, the musicianship, I remember being like, "Oh, I got this in the bag." Like, I am not it gave me a lot of sort of, like, the insecure self-talk I had maybe at the beginning because everybody here, like, looks cool too. So if you come here and you're, like, in your head and you're insecure and you let yourself get it I think the best thing for me has been just to, like, be myself, and that is when good things happen because you're not trying. So I felt super confident in a lot of ways, and that has helped me, and then it's also helped me, like, as a songwriter, my first year here, I didn't really have a, like, purpose to it. It wasn't like I was writing for an album or anything at that time too. I was not even releasing my own music anymore. I was just writing songs, compositions for film and television. I have a few different side projects that became like main projects and other artists and things like that. So my writing game just got super strong. And then I became confident. And then I saw a lot in other ways. I saw a lot of other people who like weren't super duper like incredible producers calling themselves producers. And I always hesitated to call myself a producer, even though I was contributing to songs at the time and I was recording. I always had some sort of recording setup at that time, as basic as it was. And I was like, oh, It felt like a big high school all over again, which I'm not great at. I'm not great at, like, big once I have, like, my small, cozy, like, crew, a small, tight circle where I can fully unleash myself, I'm not great at, like, walking into the party or the social setting and like, unwrapping myself right then and there. It's probably a product of being raised in this very, very, very small, close environment with really, really close friends. So I think it's helped me break out a little bit and be more confident in those, like, larger settings and, like, owning things. Like, I am a music producer, like, yeah, especially now that it's been, I don't know, 6 years living here. Um, and then it's also just really, really nice to not be other. It's really nice to have people to talk to about music, about an idea, about career hardships, about confusion about where to take a song. Whereas when you're living in a non-music environment, you don't have people to like talk to, and then you're like other, and then you just feel like the weirdo again. And here there is community in that sense, and it's so nice. It can be exhausting, and at the same time, I'm grateful that it's there. Um, because you have people to play with. You have people to play on the playground with is how it feels. And that's how Nashville, I think it's only made me a better it's helped me come into my own a little bit more, um, for better or for worse, even with the Jewish stuff, like even just realizing like there aren't a lot of us. And it's made me like in a non to talk like non-music, just in life, it's made me when I'm in Florida, I take for granted that I'm a Jew. Like my family will remind me it's the holidays, we're doing this, we're doing that. Here, it like I have to make a conscious effort to do all those things that were just built in for me. And so I have to choose and think about if this is something that's important to me, especially I have a daughter now, and there are a lot of these like fundamental anchoring um traditions and customs that were hugely important for me, and making that conscious choice, even if I'm other here, in that way, it has made me recognize my own Jewishness and made me proud of it and cling to the parts of it that I really love in a way that I don't know I would if I was around all of my Israeli friends and like all of my Jewish friends back in Florida, you know? So it's informed a lot, like both musically and personally.
I love that. I was going to ask you, you've given me a really good segue, because I was going to ask you about like how you feel like, as you, because you've been doing this for so long, like as you have aged and matured, and now especially being a parent, like sort of how do you think that your music has changed?
My music hasn't changed, but my relationship to it has. So, like, I never recognized what made me different. I was just, again, like chasing. You don't know what you are at the beginning. So, at the beginning, I was like, I love Sarah Bareilles. I'm Sarah Bareilles. Let me go be Sarah Bareilles. I would dress like with her aesthetic and everything instead of just like being my self and trying to let me like emulate this thing, or let me try to do a record that sounds like this artist. I was obsessed with Lissy, an artist named Lissy, and now I recognize I was just pulling all of the aspects that I love, but when I really just, like, look inward, I've always been making, like, existential, not angsty, I don't really write about, like, breakups or, like, what happened today so much as, like, concepts and, like, ideas, that maybe a moment prompted me to think about. And, when I sit back and look at it, even when I was trying to be Sarah Bareilles, when I was trying to be Brandy Carlisle, when I was trying to be Lissy, the content of what I was writing, even in college, when I listened back on my computer, which I would like never let anybody listen to these horrible recordings, but I can hear myself trying to become what I am now. And it was always there. I was always singing about these things. I've always been writing about these things. I've always been thinking about these things. And my music's always been pretty visceral. My live show has always been really visceral and like outward and expressive. And there's a lot of improv, and I don't like make things sound exactly like the record. And there's a lot of banter and there's a lot of talk. And I feel most comfortable when I'm playing shows, most comfortable. And I think that now that I am like, when I turned 30, there was just like, and having a kid too, you just don't want to, you recognize what makes someone, like, I recognize what makes my daughter special. And I want her to only do that. I want her to like look within, like her own source, her own life source to inform what she's going to do outwardly, because it all has to come from within. You can't pull from outward and think that that's going to make any, like, the only time anything positive has happened from anything I've ever created is because it's been, or anything in life that comes out good, like my backpacking trip. It's like when you stop like pulling and you're like, it's here. This is enough. I dress how I dress. I like what I like. I sound how I sound. I write about the things I write about. I'm Jewish. I'm Colombian. I'm American. But like, I don't feel like all of these identity, very confused about my like musical identity, my identity of my roots and all of these things. And now I am like, oh, that's who I am. That is who I am. That's 100% who I am. Oh, I'll just be that then. And that is like the power, I think, of getting older, where you're like, the magic is within me. Like, it's not outside of me. I don't need to be, I'm not one dimensional, nor am I anybody else. And I think that's like where my music is at now, where it is, if a song comes out sounding a certain way, that's just how it was meant to sound, because that is what I poured into it, and that's what came out. And hopefully I can get closer and closer to that. That's like the goal, right? Like, just get closer and closer to your essence all the time.
Emily, will you play another song?
Yeah, I have a song called Soaking in the Sun. It's not about really one thing, but like, so a little bit of like disassociation and like not being present. And then snapping out of it and being like, I'm just gonna live in this moment and soak in the sun and not but it's a lot of like negative self-talk can't sort of stem from this. It's just like a note to self kind of a song. It's not out yet, but it's in existence. It's just not, I haven't released it yet. I mess with myself until I'm numb, number one. A citizen of this weird place with a population of one. MTV, midnight hour, go to bed, take a shower. So I love myself till I go numb. Feeling good has got me getting through it. Self-soothing. Yeah, I healed myself when I was young, cracking jokes and orgasms. Yin and yang hang upside down, one life. Thank God I knew it. I'm soaking in the sun. The sun. Soaking in the sun, the sun, the sun. A little weed, I brush my teeth, find a worry, overthink it. What a relief, lying next to you. But I still love myself till I go numb. Feeling good has got me getting through it. I'm self-soothing. Yeah, I healed myself when I was young, cracking jokes and orgasm. Yin and yang hang upside down, one life, thank God I knew it. Soaking in the sun, I tell a joke, the sun, I cross the line. I wanna run away half of the time. Are there people who don't think I'm kind? I'm such a hypocrite sometimes. Soaking in the sun, the sun, the sun. Soaking in the sun, the sun, the sun. Soaking in the sun, I tell a joke, I cross the line. I wanna run away half of the time. Are there people who don't think I'm kind? I'm such a hypocrite sometimes. Soaking in the sun, the sun, the sun. Something like that.
Thank you so much to Lowen for sharing her music and her story with us. A link to listen to all of Lowen's music is in the description of the episode. Lowen also just launched a podcast called Enlightened or Whatever, which features deep conversations with her friends and collaborators in Nashville. Links to listen are in the description. You can follow Lowen on Instagram at Earth2Lowen and follow the podcast at EOWPod. Thank you for supporting Southern and Jewish. If you are watching this episode on YouTube, please subscribe so you get notifications every time we post a new episode. You can also subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and please consider leaving us a review to help us grow the show. Southern and Jewish is a production of the Institute of Southern Jewish Life. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time for more stories from the Jewish South.